Me. Greetings from the caster desk. Welcome back, everybody, to the America Spring Championship for 2016. My name is Frodan, and I'm joined on the desk by the lovely TJ Sanders. And we're going to bring you guys Duane versus Napoleon, the second match of the quarterfinals, determine who is going to semifinals and who's going to be sent home early.
Yeah, I'm so glad, Dan, that we get to cast this matchup, because this is one that I was looking forward to as soon as I saw the bracket. Napoleon came into the preliminary, and he had the cleanest run, at least for the matches that we saw on stream, out of anybody else that qualified. But Duane's a player who he's been around for the competitive scene for a little bit now. He's always floating at the top. He practices with Talion, who we saw at the Winter Championship, and he's coming off a top 8 performance at EGLX, which was a major tournament that happened in Canada just a few months ago. So this is going to be a good one.
Yep, and I really want to see if Napoleon can follow up on his claim. He said he's going to play flawlessly.
Bold call, Dan.
It's a bold call, TJ. See if it works out for him. Let's go into game number 1, Warrior versus the Hunter, and that's not going to be good looking for Napoleon to start things off here. You know, Duane said that he felt like he matched up pretty well against Napoleon, and there are some specific choices that are interesting. Of course, Napoleon being the only player in the top 8 to not bring Hunter as a class. People have been really reviving Hunter in tournament play, and even on the ladder as well. And then Duane, of course, he's got his own tempo mage featuring Ragnar's the Firelord over Yogg Saron. But we'll talk more about that matchups in depth when we get there.
Yeah, this matchup, like you mentioned, probably one that Napoleon wanted to avoid. A lot of times this matchup is favorable to the Hunter because they do just have a strong curve, and they have some specific cards that match up well against a lot of Warrior's threats, specifically Stampeding Kodo on cards like Frothing Berserker or Bloodhoof Brave. And also Call of the Wild is just a really hard card to deal with, and it's one card, and it comes sooner than the power cards from Warrior, Temple Warrior, like Marion Rin.
All right, so looks like Warrior's not on to a bad start, though. Having Fiery War Axe means that Hunter can't really snowball their advantage onto the board. You look at cards like the Huge Toad and King's Relic, and while they don't seem exactly the most imposing, you know, the fact that Hunter's usually able to play things from turn 2 onwards very consistently becomes pretty overwhelming for the Warrior, because you're taking a beating, and then you know, you can't exactly always efficiently clear if they have Houndmasters and Infested Wolves, and even Stampeding Kodo is able to out-tempo you sometimes. Yeah. So you have to be really cautious. But I think Napoleon's in a pretty decent spot.
Yeah. He's just having those early tools is really important. But the mid-game is also equally important. So he needs to pick up threats that are, besides just, you know, Frothing Berserker, to keep continuing to build up that board and get over that hump, because High Main is still going to be a card that's going to come down, and you really don't have great answers to that as a Temple Warrior.
All right, so already an interesting crossroads here for Duane. You know, he thinks, he sees the Fiery War Axe, so he immediately thinks the King's Relic would just get swallowed by that, so he doesn't really want to just play into it immediately, and he's setting up the weapon preemptively because he knows he can play Infested Wolf, and then he does have follow-up plays on the Wolves because hopefully Houndmaster can land on target, but he will be playing a little bit mana inefficient too in the following turn, so I think Duane just feels he can play a little bit slow because cards like Hyman and Call of the Wild still give you late game potential, as we saw in the previous series as well.
Yeah, it's very true. But also there is some crucial decision making, and I think even going back to the last series where we saw Dear Jason's Temple Warrior actually take out Sidonia and his Hunter. And I think in some cases Sidonia might have played some things a little bit too slow. You can't give the Warrior too much time,
right?
Because they're going to have more resources than you most of the time as the game goes on. And if you miss that mid game, if you don't apply as much pressure as you should have in that mid-game, then a lot of times the Warrior can run away with it.
And in fact, this is exactly the position that you're talking about, TJ. The fact that Warrior got one turn to set up already is a very imposing board. Frothing Berserker tucked behind a taunt minion. Not to mention that if you draw Battle Rage, that's also guaranteed multiple draws. We're looking at potentially 2 or more, depending on how Duane plays his turn. Tangle Tiger does come into the hand, giving him some flexibility in the plays, but at the same time, Duane is very concerned that he can't exactly, it's not exactly a cheap investment. He has to use Unleash the Hounds here, or if he draws something better with the King's Relic.
Yeah, very true. And that's definitely not a joust that he's going to win. But Duane does have at least some plays here. The thing is, he's going to give Napoleon so much art. Napoleon is appalled by the Unleash the Hounds.
Yeah. I think just really hoping that the Frothy Berserker can survive because, to be frank, Frothy Berserker can sometimes cheese your opponents. It's just, well, you can't actually kill this thing, so it just does 25 damage or more, and then single-handedly is a win condition. That's the power of a Frothy Berserker. It indirectly has taunt, even though it doesn't say it on its card text. It's one of the most highest priority removals when it's on the board.
Yeah, very true. And, a lot of times this matchup doesn't come down to a race. It comes down to which player can overwhelmingly take control of the board first. And right now we're not seeing either player do that. But giving your opponent that armor this early in the game really doesn't mean that much. It's not that big of a deal, just because you'll be able to chip to that armor once you take control of the board.
Pretty cute play here from Napoleon to flood the board. He saw Unleash the Hounds was just used from Duane.
Very true.
And also, important to note, Duane has only one Unleash the Hounds. So now he knows that he can flood the board with all these small little tokens, and you can't get punished as easily. Duane doesn't exactly have explosive traps, excuse me, either. So that's a really astute observation and play from Napoleon.
Yeah. It seems like Duane's Hunter list is more designed to better curve out, not have many dead cards in a lot of matchups, which Unleash the Hounds can be a dead card in a lot of matchups. He has a lot of 2-drops. He has Carrion Grub in the 3 slot and Double Infested Wolf, which means his early curve is going to be a lot more consistent than a player that's cutting some of those cards to make room for situational ones like Explosive Trap and Unleash the Hounds.
Duane also firing on all cylinders too. He knows that Warrior is kind of low on cards, not really, so he's making sure to kill off damage minions. Can't draw additional card with Battle Rage.
Yeah. And
now with that second Eaglehorn Bow, he's going to take a pretty commanding lead going into the ever so scary and spooky turn 8. I mean, people had a little bit of a PTSD on turn 6 or turn 7. Those were some of the really powerful turns when you played against Paladins. But turn 8 against Hunter is very reminiscent of that if you were to do a throwback to a now wild-only deck.
Yeah. Every time it goes in that turn 8, you squint, you clench, and then you hope that you don't see.
I am fully clenched on turn 8.
The call of the
every
wild.
time.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, this is one of the reasons why Jaime is just so strong against Warrior. There's no real great way to deal with it unless you have overwhelming board control, in which case you can usually easily deal with any card. You're not going to be able to fully remove it, and any minion that you leave up is just asking the Hunter to punish you. And now it's Napoleon running out of resources, Duane taking control of this board, and he is at a low life total, but sometimes it doesn't mean too much unless you're around that Grom Hellscream range.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list here from Napoleon. He also used some of his cheap activators in Blood to Ichor, but he does have 2 Whirlwinds, which is interesting because Whirlwinds, usually you have 1 at most in the deck list, and I think it's because Napoleon is highly anticipating that there will be a lot of Zoo Warlocks in the tournament. There will be a lot of these Hunters which have small tokens as well with the Infested Wolves.
Yeah. A lot of players choose to put in sort of, I want to call it a tech card, but it's really just a situational choice with a Rothy Weaponsmith, and that's what Napoleon decides to cut.
This is interesting. Napoleon instantly chooses to play his Gromish Hellscream because I think he wants to use his Core Carnate to bait out the Freezing Trap. I think he's hoping that Duane just ignores Grom and tries to get 13 damage to the face right here.
Yeah.
And by doing so, he can not only get Grom to trade, maybe even do damage, who knows. And then even get 2 cards off Battle Rage guaranteed.
Yeah, really, really smart play there. And, he has some time. He's starting to get his armor total chipped down. He's only at 24 health now, but he's going to be able to clear multiple things off the board. And like you mentioned, draw multiple cards. So if he can pick up some type of reasonably sized threat, Ravaging Glue is actually sick.
That's really powerful here because now he shuts down 4 power on the board. Duane's going to be looking for a Call of the Wilds or some kind of thing to start getting the card draw and board presence up. Huge Toad, not exactly it. I feel like that happened in the previous years as well. The Huge Toad top deck when you need something else.
Yeah. Huge Toad is crushing dreams today.
It's moments like this where you start understanding just the limitations of the Hunter class in general. They have very limited access to card draw. That's why they have to play things like Quick Shot and King's Elix, so that way they can have semblance of draw, because they're not playing things that help them draw deeper into the deck. Even though they are a little bit slower, they're not playing Acolytes of Pain. They're not necessarily playing Azure Drakes.
Yeah, you can see the emotion of Napoleon. Yeah, as soon as he saw that there was no Call of the Wild, He pumped his fist. And I think that's the sentiment of every single player that's ever played against a Hunter. After turn 8, every single card that they play that isn't Call of the Wild, I'll give that a fist bump.
Love the sequencing from Napoleon. If the huge toad decides to vomit a little bit onto the Ravaging Ghoul, that is a 3-card draw from Battle Rage, and that can swing the game, putting the nail in the coffin. Duane is just stuck praying to the top of his deck, and even Call of the Wild off the top would not exactly save him because Napoleon's got a lot more gas.
No. King's Relic, though, it can pick up a big threat here, but he's starting to run out of stuff. Stampeding Kodo, though, is a big deal, but that gives Napoleon that information. So now, if he's going to play Bloodhoof Brave, that means that he's going to activate immediately, but Duane realizes that, hey, I can't afford to hold on to this. In case my opponent has a sub-2 attack minion, I have to play this now to try and contest the board.
Well, that's just going to end the game right here.
Yep.
Napoleon, well, he's hovering over the Blood of Brave just to maybe taunt his opponent a little bit, saying, look what you could have Kodo'd.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he's got the game ending damage right here. So Napoleon just going to end it swift and soundly. I was kind of expecting a little bit of BM here because Napoleon didn't even wish Duane good luck.
Yeah.
And with the triumphant fist pump in game number 1, as if the best of 7's already over, Napoleon, just like that, is on the board, winning an unfavorable matchup.
The first step is always the toughest, so I can't. I'm not surprised that he's celebrating after that first win, because
huge win.
Get on a big stage like this one, playing Hearthstone in front of so many people, it can be a big deal, and so the first win, that's the hardest.
Yeah, so he's up getting that first win over Duane, who's looking to make his mark in the series, but we'll have to go into game 2 before we do that. Take a look a little bit closer at Duane, player from Canada, as we get ready for our second game of the series.
So I grew up in Canada. However, I am from a Chinese family, and they have these pretty strict rules where you go to school, go to high school, go to college or university, and then you get a job and start a family. That's the adult life you're supposed to have. However, I didn't want that. I did finish school. I did find a decent job, and I liked it at first. However, it wasn't the right direction I wanted to go. My banking job was boring. Basically, it's the same routine every day. Felt like that was when my road had 2 directions to go. That's when I started playing Hearthstone seriously. I really look forward into this being an opening for me for some vast opportunities. This is kind of like my last chance to try it. If it works, it's right now.
All right, getting to know Duane a little bit better, who did quit his job so he can pursue Hearthstone full-time, and it's been working out pretty well. He got to the big stage, although right now it's, recently he lost game number 1 in the series, but all things considering, he's been practicing with Talion, and he's been playing games with him for 7 years. Talion came to the Winter Championship, and now he's here in the Spring Championship. So it does feel like, in a way, that group has been here for the majority of 2016's HCT.
Yeah, very true. And he may seem like a soft-spoken individual, but talking to him over the past couple of days, he'll talk endlessly about like his deck choices, his decision making. So you can tell he's really passionate about the game and really wants to show that he has what it takes.
Speaking of passionate, as we go into this Druid versus Hunter matchup, Napoleon also is very passionate, and specifically because Napoleon, much like many of the viewers who also like to, watch Hearthstone tournaments, he was watching a lot of the players, and he felt like, I think I can play better than a lot of these guys. So that's actually how he got into Hearthstone and started following a lot of streamers and signed up for tournaments. He even said he wasn't sure how far he'd get, but now he's here on the big stage, and he's trying to make big plays, and that's why he's even declaring himself. He's trying to do like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm not going to misplay because I've been criticizing these guys for so long watching their streams. I think I can do that as well, maybe even better. And I mean, he's so far flawless. He's 1-0.
Yeah.
So good job so far.
Yeah. Every stream watcher's dream is you look at the stream and you say, I think I'm better than that guy. Napoleon is proving it that he's better. So Cthulhu Druid this time around. This is a deck that sort of picked up steam, and I expected it a lot in the Americas, just because there are a lot of players on the Americas ranked play that do play Cthulhu Druid at a very high level. And Napoleon has a deck list that's sort of similar to the ones that we saw players like Soundstorm, the ability, BB Gun get very high on the rank ladder last season.
BB Gun Gun's awesome, man. He basically just trades everybody who's
Yeah.
who asks him of it.
Yes.
He's in fact, all the people within the Chinese practice group kind of have a internal joke about BB Gun, how he's like BB God or something.
Yeah.
Kind of just like worshiping him all the time.
It's true. You see all these players list
I
him
know.
in their
But yet
practice
he himself, he gets like top 5 in ladder, and yet he himself doesn't qualify.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing.
Yep.
You don't exactly expect to win many of the jousts against a Cthulhu deck, most notably because Cthulhu is 10 mana, but also because top down, there's just so many heavy cost cards in the Cthulhu deck, ranging from Twin Emperor Veclor, Ancient of War, and even some of the 6 drops like Sylvanas and Dark Arakoa.
Yeah. Look at this curve from Napoleon. He's got Innervate Dark Arakoa, which not only, curves him into Dura the Claw, but what it also does is buff his Cthulhu up to 11/11, which means his Twin Emperor Veclor will be online. So he's got a lot of options here, and sometimes it's hard for a hunter to deal with those big threats if they keep coming turn after turn. They do have Deadly Shot. That's a card that exists, but
it's true, but
you don't have a lot.
So many. If you could Deadly Shot every single minion, you'd still probably be slightly behind because of Twin Emperor Veclor.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's really tough matchup for hunter overall. Not to mention that like the druid will be able to most likely survive. Their waves of taunts are just so hard to get past, and cards like Highmane used to have the ultimate value over druid, but cards like Dark Arakoa and Sylvanas are so problematic to deal with as hunter.
Yeah. Napoleon thought for a second there. He's making sure that he's going to curve out correctly. I think since he had 2 6-drops, it's always beneficial to think through your turns and say maybe it's better to play Sylvanas, but something like an Eaglehorn Bow or a Quick Shot would have meant that Duane could have traded in to the Sylvanas for free. Well, not for free, but trade evenly with such
low
powerful
value.
Card. Exactly.
Yeah, and when you have plays like that, the only benefit of it is that you force your opponent to play off mana. So like if they play Eaglehorn Bow, they spend 3 out of 4 crystals. But then you're not even having something on board versus, in this case, Dark Arakoa survived.
Yeah.
And that swipe off the top means it's a pretty clean removal. Also can play Druid the Claw to continue to improve his board. Like it's very clear that Duane didn't have clean removal for it either. Choose to go for swipe. I don't mind it because it kind of gets some pressure onto the board and kind of maximizes the Dark Arakoa as opposed to just trading onto the board.
Yeah. And, getting that face damage in is really important. A lot of times against Hunter, trading can be beneficial because of the threat of Houndmaster. But the threat of Houndmaster mostly comes from the hand. It doesn't necessarily come from the board. In this situation, leaving Houndmaster up is not a big deal because you're not going to be able to buff the Houndmaster up in any way besides maybe a Leok. That would make it so that getting face damage in would punish you.
Eaglehorn Bow is another way to remove it, but your only proactive play there is to actually have the bow up. So I like having the huge toad as opposed to having the weapon up. And Napoleon's, he's still able to curve out. Duane's still fighting with all he can, but it's going to be hard to get through the Twin Emperor Veclor. And then Napoleon can start putting on the pressure with Druid the Claw, perhaps even in charge if he wants to end the game fast. Yeah.
And this is a much better turn to play Sylvanas because of the reasons you mentioned before. You're on turn 6, which is usually such a powerful turn for hunters. One, they either play Savannah Highmane, or they like to play like 2-3 drops. So it's a power turn regardless, and this makes it really awkward for Duane because he can't make the most powerful play that he has available to him, without it getting punished in some way by Sylvanas.
Yep, and so doing the always plan B with Sylvanas, which is very important to have. And now Napoleon's realizing it as he takes a moment to stop and think, is that what if they just ignore Sylvanas and they start rushing you down and making your health what they're interacting with as opposed to your minions?
Yeah.
And that's a lot to deal with because, Duane has kill command and he has other ways, so that is his alternative way to win. Yeah, I won't win the board perhaps, but maybe I can rush you down.
Yeah, sign of a good hunter player nowadays, and even in the past to a certain extent, is when that player decides that trading on the board is no longer the correct play and trying to play aggressively and end the game before your opponent can take full control of the board is the right line. So Duane says, you know what, no way to deal with Sylvanas cleanly. I'm going to go ahead and try and end this game quickly.
And I think Napoleon is also weighing things like, if I attack with Sylvanas and I do take the damage to my own health count, what is there anything silly that I'm setting myself into? Am I potentially lowering my health too much? Do I want to take the additional damage onto the 4/6 minion? You know, so these are things are evaluating, because I think Twin Emperor Veclor was definitely the play that turn.
Yeah. Duane does draw into Call of the Wild. It's still a turn away. Now, how Duane knows that Call of the Wild is almost always going to be his play next turn. He's thinking, how can I best set up the current board to make it so that my Call of the Wild will be the most impactful next turn? Is there a way that I can deal with Sylvanas in a good way to make sure that my Call of the Wild is impactful? So that's what he's going to do.
Napoleon's pretty happy. He's like, well, that's such an inefficient play.
Yeah.
He gave me a 1/1. He's also giving up his own board, unable to trade effectively. And, I mean, that feels almost lights out, because, again, Duane doesn't have, like, more than one Unleash the Hounds in the deck, and even if he played Call of the Wild, he can barely trade for just one minion onto the board, and Napoleon's going to be able to set up a lot of pressure. I would love to just see Drew the Claw charge the face.
Yeah. I don't think you really need that extra health for the taunt, but looks like he is just going to play it safe. He does have such a huge lead, he might not want to get in a position where Call of the Wild punishes him, because Drew to the Claw in charge mode will not trade favorably into like a Misha sort of thing, where now it will survive. So things like that, I guess, considering, and that could be a big deal in the long run, but he does have a big lead.
The only reason why I say it is because I would love to see him push for damage.
Sure.
In this case, if he got that 4 damage in, I think because of Wrath and Hero Power, he might have been able to kill. I didn't do the exact math down. But it's just like, you know, the point is you don't want to give Hunter time, but he's still in a really dominant position. And as long as he plays any of these 4-mana minions, I think Napoleon is just going to close it out in the next turn, because Duane's, like, Hunter's comeback potential has significantly dropped ever since they stopped including Knife Juggler into their decks. Ever since, like, cards like Haunted Creeper and these other really sticky Death Rattle minions have also exited. It's been very difficult for them to swing it back in their favor.
Especially with a single copy of Unleash the Hounds. That, you know, it's not the biggest deal in this matchup, because a lot of times these minions are outside of reach of what Unleash the Hounds could have the potential to do, but still it's just a nod to what type of deck Duane decided to build.
Fiery Bat. Probably the best draw on turn 1, but worst day you could have in this scenario, and that's a 2-0 lead for Napoleon, as he is currently holding it down for Team America right now.
Yeah.
Probably getting some revenge, because Sidonia took it for Team Canada in the previous round.
Not much celebrating after that round, but it was a more favorable matchup, and now he's got that second match in the bag, already up 2-0. Napoleon's looking good.
That's right. Let's take a second to get to know Napoleon a little bit better as we prepare ourselves for game number 3.
One of the most fun things about a Hearthstone match is that you watch these games and you think, maybe one day I can do something like that. That's exactly what Napoleon did.
I was a normal viewer watching a lot of Hearthstone streamers and a lot of Hearthstone tournaments, and I saw a lot of players making questionable plays that I would never make, and I thought I could do better than those players at those tournaments.
He had one goal in mind when entering the Americas preliminary: to not make a single mistake.
Good game, like, it happened. Wow, the double fist bump. I'm surprised he's not got up and done a victory lap for this one now, as Napoleon is gonna book his spot in the top 8. Well,
Sup, Dan?
hey.
Not much, man. That was some entertaining Hearthstone.
Super hard to do, and if he's here in the championship, let's see if he can do it again.
So here I am now. I never thought I would make it here, but I'm here. I don't think I'm at a disadvantage for my lack of tournament experience, because every player here has a lack of live tournament experience as well. I think I can do better than they do, and now that I'm here, I will show that I can play. I will play flawlessly.
What's up, Dan?
Not much, man. That was an entertaining interview. Just because, man, this guy might be the first person in Hearthstone history to make such a bold, declarative statement like that. I'm not gonna make a single mistake, and he's winning. Like, usually when you say that, that means you've doomed yourself for a first round exit. And this kid, he's putting himself on the map, man. He's up 2-0. Only 2 games away from going to the semifinals.
We've seen some people say, I'm going to come here and I'm going to win the championship. And with a little bit of gusto, but, you know, they're sort of trained to say that type of thing. Napoleon, when you talk to him, he honestly believes that he is going to play flawlessly. And so far, I haven't seen anything.
So far, if he keeps playing this, he's going to win BlizzCon.
Yeah, I mean, seems like it is. But it's only 2 games. We can't get ahead of ourselves yet. Duane
Let's not count our chickens.
still has some powerful decks left remaining. And one of those is going to be the Shaman.
So Shaman against the Zoo Warlock is still very much, people still feeling the Zoo Warlock. I was actually anticipating Duane to ban the Zoo Warlock just because he had Hunter, he has Tempo Mage, he also has, Shaman, which I don't think Napoleon was going to ban either. So, knowing that Shaman's going to be much more open this tournament, and you know that Napoleon has Zoo Warlock, why do you think he left it open?
I don't know, and we were actually talking about this before, and he's got some interesting inclusions in his decks that sort of lead us to believe that he would still want to ban that. He's got like a single copy of Forbidden Ritual in Warlock, which means that it feels like he's trying to make his matchup more consistent against Warrior. And he just wasn't able to get the win early on, but he also has Wrathguard, which means he wants to be more aggressive, which usually isn't what you want to do against that type of deck. So it's like a very interesting choice with a lot of interesting tech cards in his decks that may not make sense, but who knows? He must have a strategy, and we'll see if it's going to work out for him.
Yeah, Duane's the one with the Wrathguard in his Zoo Warlock. Napoleon's got Crazed Alchemist and some of the usual suspects. And he's starting off very conservatively. He had the coin, and he had the curve as well. So he could have played 2 1-mana minion and then followed with Dark Peddler. But he kept his options open in case for Totem Golem. So he could play Power Overwhelming and also squeeze in the Dark Peddler if he wants to. Still has a lot of options. I mean, pretty much everything in his hand is a viable play.
Yeah. And that's when
I think
things
except
get
for
tough.
the Abusive Sergeant. I think you want to actually see
Yeah. That's when things get tough as well. It's
Soulfire.
Yeah, Soulfire, it is going to preserve his board. Also, it's the most likely
Wow.
to discard a card that doesn't matter.
That's fantastic. That was the least damaging card.
Yeah.
Everything else he kind of really wanted here. The
Yeah.
Abusive Sergeant, Power Overwhelming are fantastic with Argent Squire and Possessed Villager. And the Dark Peddler fills out the curve perfectly if your opponent has a passive turn of hero powering. This is a dominant position that every Zoo dreams of in this matchup.
Yeah. With a great opening hand
Yeah.
as well. That's what you want. You want the follow-up as well. So Napoleon putting himself in a great position. But, Duane does have 2 Flame Wreath Faceless. And even though Zoo can take control of the board, Flame Wreath Faces are hard to deal with. And if 2 of those things hit you in the face just once or twice, I mean, you're looking at a situation where the Shaman can end the game with just spells.
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves here. I think Napoleon's going to be so far ahead on board that it
probably
might
true,
not
yeah.
matter. And, I mean, if he can set up the Direwolf Alpha or the Dark Peddler here to follow up, it'll be extremely powerful because then Power Overwhelming becomes really insane to trade to the 7/7 for just 1 mana and a minion on board.
Yeah, and you can tell here Napoleon, he's not really thinking of what cards he wants to play. What he's doing is he's thinking through how he wants to position his minions. And that's a big deal. What he does is he puts his 2 damage minions in the middle, which means Direwolf Alpha is going to make him be able to trade more favorably into Feral Spirits, which is actually a really big deal.
Napoleon's trying really hard not to telegraph like that.
Yeah.
He has different things, but it's really hard to contain your excitement when you specifically play into a turn because you know that's what your opponent wants to do, and then you're rewarded by good positioning and by very strong forethought. So Napoleon's extremely excited, as you can tell, because if he goes up 3-0, which is, I gotta say, it's very likely to happen because this is what a position where Zoo runaways with every single time.
Yeah.
Then that's insurmountable for Duane. Like, you have to win 4 games in a row. It happens very rarely in a game like Hearthstone.
Yeah, and it's very unlikely for this game as well. Now, he does have some options here. He does have some tools that he can try and come back with, but they're all awkward. His mana right now is really awkward. His ideal play would be something like Rockbiter Weapon on the Direwolf Alpha, and then Feral Spirits. Because right now, Feral Spirits, with the position from Napoleon, he's got those 2 attack minions on either side of the Direwolf, which means he gets really favorable trades into that card. So it looks like he's just going to Totem Golem, and he does have a position to come back if Napoleon does draw dead, but...
I mean, Napoleon's made several impressive plays this game already. Knife Juggler also a little bit interesting based off the way that juggle could happen. So I think Direwolf Alpha is safer. The first, of course, was the choice to go only one mana minion on the board with Possessed Village. The second, of course, was to use Soulfire immediately there. A lot of players would be tempted to use Soulfire when you have an empty hand. That's like the optimal scenario, so you don't discard.
Yeah.
And then you leverage your hero power to get back the card count. And instead, he chose to take that slight risk, although he knew the payoff was huge, and he got it. So and he's been rewarded so far with very careful, meticulous play. Duane picking up Doomhammer, by the way, was an amazing draw, because now all of a sudden he can stabilize onto the board over the course of turns. And then because Napoleon already used cards like Soulfire, it's going to be a little bit trickier for him to try to burst him down. Oh! Did I say it's going to be a little bit trickier?
Yeah, and
I mean, it's going to be really easy for him to burst him down with cards like Leroy.
Yeah. He does have to get through Feral Spirits, which is most likely going to come down next turn. We'll see, but you really can't feel comfortable being at 8 health as the Shaman. And Abusa Sergeant, that's not a great pickup. He has an awkward amount of mana here, so we'd have to Feral Spirits and probably Totem up in hopes of maybe getting a Stoneclaw Totem to try and block some more damage.
Wow. Going to use his weapons to remove the Voidwalker so he can start hopefully going aggressive. But Napoleon, based off the count here, if he maximizes damage, it's still just be a little bit short. If he just gets some good juggles.
Yeah. Gormok can't quite use that, so can he get through here with the juggle from the Leroy Jenkins?
If Leroy
if it hits either of the Feral Spirits, then he wins.
He's willing to gamble.
So
there you go. Wow,
oh, okay.
That's perfect.
That's perfect. But he doesn't have it this turn. He's got it next turn, but he's got plenty of health to work with. He's at 21. Even if Duane were to have, the second Rock Biter and like a Lava Burst, he'd still be short for being able to close out the game.
He had double Rock Biter.
Well, he's already used one, right. But even if he did have double Rock Biter,
he would have Lava Burst.
And yeah, he'd have to have Lava Burst. So,
yeah, man, I think that's it. No taunts guaranteed. He has to hero power and roll the Tuskar Totemic to try and survive.
Yeah.
But then you're just dead on board both ways. So that should just wrap up the game here, and that's going to be a 3-0 lead for our flawless American player.
Yeah, it is good to point out that's good sequencing from Duane if he was going for that play, because if you get a Stoneclaw Totem from Tuskar Totemic, you can't get another one from your hero power. But the other way around, it is the case that you can get both. So he played as well as he could have in the situation, but Napoleon is just on fire right now. 3-0 up in the series. Dan, we always cast the 4-0 matches. That's what it is.
We do. We cast the fast ones. We cast the furious ones. And the only one person here it's his responsibility to make it even. That's Duane. He has to overcome a 3-0 deficit, which is so difficult. And he's not just doing it for himself. He's playing also on behalf of the winter finalist, Untitled, who's his practice partner and very close friend. Take a look as we explore a little bit of that friendship before we go into game number 4.
The story goes back 7 years ago when I first met Talion in a card shop. We met basically playing card games, strategy games, and we find each other to be both very genuine people. We became really good friends. And then I started playing Hearthstone, and I dragged him into it. He has won top 8 for the Winter Championship. I'm top 8 right now for the Spring Championship. He didn't take it down last time. For me being here, it means a lot to him as well. We are practically like brothers, which trust each other. Definitely doing some of the best prep work out there. Thanks to his deck building and thanks to both our analyzing skills, we'll be able to achieve these results. We will make an impact in the Hearthstone scene. I would really like to win the tournament for me and for him.
Dan, I like to say that I'm the Duane to your Talion.
That makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside, TJ.
Glad to hear it.
I couldn't be more honored. Duane's fighting for the power of friendship. And normally in TV shows and movies, that's enough to turn it around. Actually, if this was an anime of sorts, the way you would write it is Duane is down 0-3 and then goes on a terror rampage. Summons the inner power of friendship. Black Sharpie on the hand and everything, making a smiley face. But will it happen? He has to win every single game. Napoleon's going on Freeze Mage, and to 4-0 Freeze Mage, first of all, if you bring Freeze Mage to a tournament, you have to be pretty dang confident to play it because it's definitely a deck that isn't for the weak-hearted.
Yeah.
But to 4-0 a deck that draws so consistently, Freeze Mage can dig so deep into their deck every single game. It's going to be tough. We're going to start things off with the Shaman versus the Freeze Mage. Probably Freeze Mage's worst matchup across the lineup here.
Yeah, and we've seen quite a few different variations of Freeze Mage across the championships. But this one is probably the more standard. You know, a lot of people know this as sort of the laughing freeze mage. He's one of the highest rated, at least by his peers, freeze mage player in the world. Forgotten Torch was sort of his thing without Archmage Antonidas. The list has changed over time. You know, there's only one Acolyte of Pain in the list now, and a Flame Strike instead of it, because of the power of Flame Strike, and also because now that the deck has lost some of its tools like Mad Scientist, it can afford to run more early cycle cards like Novice Engineer and Loot Hoarder, so you don't quite need the Acolytes a lot of the time.
Power of Flame Strike versus the power of Friendship. I kind of like the motifs we've got going on here.
Flame Strike wins every time. Flame Strike ruins friendships.
Still better than SAO Season 2. Well, Duane, he doesn't have anything to play. What is this? It's supposed to be an aggressive Xiaomi. You're supposed to have the... Where's the Tunnel Trogs? Where's the Totem Golems?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's got Totem Golem next turn, I guess, with Tuskar Totemic. But Napoleon will take every single turn he can buy. Already introduced with interesting crossovers. He's like, well, Duane didn't play anything for the first 2 turns. Surely he has to do something on turn 3. Can I interrupt him with a Doomsayer? Or should I just play as if I'm playing a normal deck and have Novice Engineer to cycle through? There's a lot of decision to be weighed because they have 2 very different lines going in different paths.
Yeah, and I kind of like going with the Novice Engineer here. Doomsayer, it's used in 2 situations, either coupled with a freeze or to ruin one of your opponent's strong early plays. So a lot of times it's better used when your opponent plays a strong minion on those early turns. So if you played Totem Golem, I think Doomsayer would have been better because it's hard to answer. But since he had the weaker play, I think Doomsayer is going to be better saved, maybe to couple with a freeze effect in the later turns.
Oh, okay. So Duane finally started to pick up some of his own fortune. I mean, he's been losing a lot of those jousts. And Napoleon is...
he can't even right now.
He can't believe it. Not like this, Flame Tongue Totem. It's, I mean, it's just a Flame Tongue Totem. I don't think Napoleon was going to do a lot of work with the Novice Engineer. But I think what he's really afraid of is the explosive potential, because he knows Argent Horse Rider could be in the deck, and then all of a sudden that's 11 damage coming the other way next turn. So it can rack up very quickly.
Yeah. Now on a turn where he would love to have played Ice Barrier. This turn it doesn't really matter that much because the Ice Barrier would have just been negated almost entirely by the damage that was just on the board.
Yeah.
So now he's going to go and play the Doomsayer. And now since this is Duane has some investments on the board. Now it's Doomsayer's going to pay off a little bit more.
Oh yeah, I mean that. Or I'll take as many Horse Riders over the British Pound right now.
Don't worry, Russ. The cavalry's here.
Oh no, Napoleon's like nah. I just love that he's so invested into the game, man. Because you can see that he's so close. He's 1 game away from potentially getting sweeps, and we don't see 4-0s. Like, we rarely see it in a best of 7, because the top 80 is usually very close when you stratify all their skill levels.
Yeah. Especially best of 7s because of how close the decks match up.
And back and forth, and with Conquest kind of making sure that you have very solid decks overall. And at this point, I think Napoleon just going to be playing defense for the entire game because Duane's taking too much initiative. And he's spending a lot of his resources inefficiently that you see, you know? Like, he doesn't have efficient remove for stuff, so he had to coin ping instead of having clean plays.
Yeah, very true, which means his power plays later on in the game are going to come 1 turn later because he wasn't able to hold on to the coin. Like otherwise he would have maybe been able to use Blizzard this turn with the coin. Now I can't really afford to, well, of course he just can't do it at all. Another Doomsayer picked up, but nothing really to couple it with now, and it's just going to get eaten up by the board.
Yeah, I mean...
Ugh is right.
I guess you could try to stall the turn if you just play Ice Barrier and you use your hero power onto the Abusive Sergeant. You gain 8 health from Ice Barrier, but there's 8 power on board, so it's kind of like a stall. Because you could also Ice Barrier Doomsayer if you want to gain even more health. I mean, Doomsayer wouldn't be impactful, though. That's kind of the big problem. And also, here's another thing, too. You have to figure out a way to win, because eventually Shaman will just keep drawing more damage and more damage and more damage, and you're stalling, but can you actually win?
Yeah, it's very true. And a lot of times Freeze Mage will fall into that trap. They can pull wins out of nowhere, though. And Napoleon's sticking to his plays here. A couple options. He might want to feel like he needs to remove something of power off the board and start whittling away, like fireballing the Totem Golem, as weird as it sounds. But looks like Ice Barrier plus the ping to try and set up for a Blizzard.
That's also completely fair too. Willing to take a little bit more damage in exchange for clearing the board a little bit more guaranteed the following turns, because he doesn't have a follow-up to it. Like you mentioned, he has only one Flame Strike in the deck.
Yeah. And that Flame Strike was a pretty new inclusion, I think, because of the fact that since there's been sort of a lack of AoE clears in a lot of decks that are powerful right now, players are more likely to play styles that flood the board a lot more.
Sure.
More flood-centric decks. Like Zoo, Shaman tends to do that as well. Even Warrior to an extent. Flame Strike can stop a Temple Warrior in its tracks. So
yeah, Call of the Wild is kind of around that mana.
Sure,
and
yeah.
It's a very clean way to kill it. You know, even Druids have a lot of those mid-range sized health at like 4 to 5 to 6. So if you can Blizzard and Flame Strike chain. Duane picking up the Druid hero power. Probably the 3rd best on average. Maybe even the 2nd best in this matchup specifically. You always want to prioritize the Hunter hero power. But things like the armor gain and the fact that you can have another source of damage that's not on the board is pretty relevant.
Yeah. Also might sort of give your opponent, hint at your opponent the fact that you have Doomhammer, which might make them use resources inefficiently, like throwing Frost Bowls or Ice Lance at the face when they may not necessarily need to.
All right, so Duane doesn't exactly have the best plays here. He's just going to hero power. I don't even really think Flame Tongue is necessary. It just makes you more susceptible to a follow-up AoE push.
Yeah.
From, AoE effect push from Napoleon.
Arcane Intellect picked up.
Yeah, if he picks up Frost Nova, he'll be just 1 mana off. Okay, so he has the Doomsayer. I think he's just optimistically hoping that it goes off, but in the worst case event, it gives him 7 health or more.
Yeah, which at this stage in the game is actually a really big deal because Napoleon just needs time. You know, he's got the cycle in his hand, he's got the burn in his hand. He just needs time to be able to play those.
Is that lethal? I think that is. 5 plus 4 on the Flame Tongue Totem is 9 plus the 4 plus the Rockfire. Yeah,
oh, wow.
That should be it.
Okay.
Like, as much as you're like, well, I hope I survive with this Doomsayer, Duane actually just has enough damage from the hand to end this game. And thankfully for him, able to pull back into the series, because going down 4-0 is just not the way you want it to go at all. It just means that you were cornered from the get-go.
Yeah. Still a very big and frosty hill to climb for Duane, though. Having to now still win 3 more matches in a row against the Freeze Mage deck, but does get himself on the board.
I see what you did there. I didn't need a pair of glasses to see that. All right, so game number 4 in the books. We have a 3-1 score, guys. We're going to be right back and check out this brief little piece while we get ready for game number 5.
My cat is 1 year and 6 months. I named him Huffer because when he was little, he likes to charge at me when he's hungry.
He named his cat Huffer.
Yeah.
Not Leah? No love for Leah?
I don't think anyone told Duane that Huffer's actually a pig.
I just imagined the day that someone actually names their child Huffer. Maybe as their middle name. TJ Huffer.
And that man's name was Robert A. Wing.
Man. Or there's probably some bad pun with Hearthstone, like Meow Furion. You would name my cat.
That's a good one, Dan.
Thank you, TJ. I'm glad that you can appreciate my humor. Rob's, of course, chuckling in the background as well.
Yeah.
Let's go into game number 5. Duane is currently down 1-3. His best decks against the Freeze Mage still is Hunter, and he still has a couple of other things. But what I'm looking at is like, how is he going to win with some of his entire lineup? We do know that he has Tempo Mage.
Yep.
And that deck historically has been kind of awkward against Freeze Mage. He does have Ragnaros, which conveniently works out. But
yeah, the thing about Tempo Mage has a lot of spells from hand. He does have the Ragnaros Firelord in his deck. An unchallenged Flamewaker on the board against Freeze Mage can do wonders, but we'll have to see if we get into that matchup. He's still got to win with the Hunter first. You mentioned this is probably the best matchup that he has left. And throwing that out there now, you know he has to win with that at least at some point in this series. So might as well try and swing the momentum in his favor by making the series 3-2.
All right, so The Hunter starting off with Fiery Bet, by the way, is a pretty big deal because it just kind of makes the Freeze Mage react to it immediately and start pinging. Instead of developing anything that they usually want to do, like Loot Hoarder, and stopping the draw means that you can continue the pressure on. And as long as the Freeze Mage is stuck reacting every single time, Hunter can continue to do more damage, and then it's hard for the Freeze Mage to flip it on them, because they're going to eventually want to start burning the Hunter down and start racing them. If they can get Ice Block up without Straza, that's usually a position where they can win. But it's not always that convenient, and also they have so many ways to deal damage from the hand, from quick shots to weapons to kill commands, and then even cards like Call of the Wild become a problem too, because it's 5 damage from the Huffer.
Yeah. Duane here faced with I guess a difficult decision, whether or not to coin out the Carrion Grub or steep the coin into Hero Power. Now, if he coins out Carrion Grub, he doesn't have a turn 3 play, well, besides Unleash the Hounds, but it's unlikely that'll be able to get used. And what it also does is Call of the Wild is going to be a turn later. So he actually decides to do it, and this is going to put more sort of pressure over time, but it does mean he's going to miss some crucial turns.
It's true. And we'll have to find out. Quick shot. No. That's a really good read, too, from Napoleon as well. He says Duane was obviously conflicted about coining this out. What's so conflicting about it? If you had Animal Companion and you had another 3-man in play, you'd probably do it. So Napoleon kind of preying on the tendencies and the hesitation from Duane to anticipate that he could probably get his Doomsayer off, as opposed to taking it slow or even reacting through Ice Barrier / Arcane Intellect.
Yeah. All right, so Napoleon, of course, having the option to play Ice Barrier, Arcane Intellect, he knows that he has time.
Right.
There's nothing happening on the board, so what he's going to do is just decide to play on curve. You know, make sure that he's the most mana efficient as possible, since he does have that lead. And Duane's actually going to throw Infested Wolf on the board into a Doomsayer just to get the 1/1s.
Yep, the 1/1s means that's a high chance that Houndmaster lands on something, which it certainly will. In this case, Napoleon only cleans up one of them. Napoleon also, by the way, played Doomsayer because he on turn 4 because he knows Duane has 2 Stampeding Kodos.
Yeah.
And no matter how much, unless your opponent has 7 minions on the board, he can always kill that with Deadly Shots, Stampeding Kodos. You don't want to put too much stock in it, so Napoleon just threw it out there, trying to get as much time as possible. But with that Huffer play, Duane is putting significant pressure on Napoleon. Now he's going to have to Blizzard this, or maybe even Frost Nova. It depends on how he's feeling.
Yeah. Blizzard, a lot of times, you know, it can feel good to try and save Blizzard because it hits more targets. But in the same vein, you have to sort of look at it as it hits more targets because it costs more mana. Or does damage to targets because it costs more mana. So being mana efficient against Hunter is probably one of the most important things to do in this matchup, because every turn matters. You know, a lot of times you're going to win the game the turn before you're going to die if you win. So making sure that you have the mana to be able to do everything that you want to and stopping as much damage as possible is very crucial in this matchup, especially.
Okay, this is pretty interesting. Napoleon invites Duane to attack, and yes, Ice Barrier does gain you 8 health, but you know, also in the cases where your opponent doesn't pop it, you lower your health too much, right?
Yeah.
Like say Duane kept hero powering and kept building the board. Over turns, he might just ignore Ice Barrier, so he purposely wants him to pop it. And of course, Duane drawing the freezing trap means that the Loot Hoarder can't attack. So Napoleon, I would say, gets semi-punished for this. He took the extra damage on the Houndmaster that he could have avoided because he did have the Frostbolt there.
Just going to go ahead and ping off his own Loot Hoarder. Definitely a strong play because you said not going to be able to attack with it anyway. There's no point in leaving it on the board either, just because it's not really going to do anything. Eventually, you would want to attack in with it to try and get it, but you'd give your opponent an Eagle Horn.
So you can get 5 damage in this turn from the Call of the Wild, which usually on turn 8 is the right play. You all get to start weaving hero powers in. But I mean, I like Huffer because it is 5 damage immediately.
Yeah.
And if your opponent can't deal with it, or even in the better case, it's not Ice Barrier, you can start pressuring significantly on the health counter.
Yeah.
Napoleon staring at 19 health with 12 on the board. That's not a really comfortable spot to be in. He does have some Frost Novas to stall, but he needs to, again, be in a position where he has to find a way to win the game as opposed to buying time.
Yeah, you know, a couple key cards are going to need to be found, mainly Alex Straza and second Ice Block. Now, a lot of times you have to have that second Ice Block to give yourself time to burn it out, and he does have the card draw to do it. There's Ice Lance, a little more burn, and Roaring Torch.
That's a lot of damage. Blood Mage Thanos, 2 Fireballs, Frostbolt. Or it's not 2 fireballs, excuse me. One's a roaring torch.
Yeah.
But if he can maximize his damage,
It's 23 total, I think.
23. And if you can weave into hero power, the problem is you can't squeeze it all in one turn, though.
Yeah, you have to do it over 2 turns, and you have to give yourself a chance to draw. There's second ice block, so now I think he does have the time, and that's what he's going to do. He's going to start weaving in these hero powers and trying to get Cycle out there at the same time.
Right. Throw either the Roaring Torch or Frostbolt Ice Lance. The weakness of Frostbolt Ice Lance, of course, is if you draw the second Ice Lance.
Yeah.
Well, there goes your way to activate it, and actually the way to win the game. So I think a lot of players probably debate till the end of time with Roaring Torch versus Frostbolt Ice Lance. The benefit of Frostbolt Ice Lance is you stop his second Eagle Horn bow from being able to be relevant.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not a clean-cut decision. It's you have to choose one or the other here.
Yeah, but now Napoleon has 3 turns to draw into, at least 3 turns to draw into an additional burn spell, whether it be Pyroblast or the second Fireball. And, you know, I think that might be it. Maybe Forgotten Torch and something else. But
how valid is it to just unleash the Hounds to kill the Blood Mage Thanos because you don't trust his damage that he can do from the hand?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things where if he's burning you aggressively with a play like that, he's kind of signifying that he has more burn and he's off the I'm going to play Alex Draza next turn play.
Yeah. Then you don't fit in hero power if you want to play high main as well. I'm not sure how impactful that is since you already have
so much onto the board, and Invested Wolf kind of is like high main is leaving behind stuff.
Yeah.
It leaves behind 2 power instead of 4, but you already have, like, if your opponent has Flame Strike, he's going to Flame Strike you if you're going to play high main, you know?
Yeah. I think there actually is a lot of merit to it, because that's the difference if he has 2 spells. That's 2 damage. I mean, that might buy you turns. And he actually decides to not do it.
Oh, he draws second Ice Lance! All right, well, you know what? He's still going to be able to do 15 damage this turn, putting himself on, I mean, just another Fireball to end the game.
Yeah, and he will have a...
He is pissed.
Yeah.
At himself, of course. Because,
Yeah.
you know, we were just talking about weighing the situation here. Because the thing about it is that if his Thanos died, he got 1 less damage off. Because if he played Frostbolt and Ice Lance together. So he got 2 damage off of that buff from the Thanos. But, you know, at the same time, he lost his Ice Lance, which it was a 1 in whatever amount of cards were left. I think like 12 or 13. So it's an unlikely scenario in his end, but it ends up being the play that could cost him. Although,
and there's the Frostbolt. And
there it is.
He does have lethal, so he's going to do it, but you can see him sort of nodding to himself saying, okay, I got it. Even though the Ice Lance was a scary draw for me because I thought that I misplayed, he's still going to take it. And Napoleon is going to move on to the semifinals.
Fist pump of victory as a moment of triumph washes over Napoleon, realizing that he's in the semifinals. And you know what? May not be completely flawless, but it's pretty damn close in my book.
Yeah.
Well, job well done, Napoleon. And he is going to send Duane back to Canada, taking one for Team America.